Hey y'all, it's Jennifer. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am coming to you with a book haul, and I think you're going to be very proud of me. These are all the books that I have hauled in 2022, and it just doesn't feel like a lot to me. The last time I did a book haul, it was before the start of the year, and I know that was a pretty massive book haul, but I've done so much on it. I feel like I've made a great headway into that list of books, and so I did recently place an order from Thrift Books. Now I have gotten a Book of the Month Club pick every month this year, but I don't typically haul those. I'm not really sure why, because I think I actually tend to read those pretty quickly and I forget to haul something if I have already read it. So actually a couple of Book of the Month selections are not here, but I certainly hauled them this year and I certainly read them this year as well. But the haul is kind of separated into two very distinct piles. We have the non-German classic pile, and then we have the German classic pile. I realize this is one of my catchphrases, as I've recently rewatched a couple of my videos, and I realize now that I say this in essentially every video, but I am down the rabbit hole right now with German literature, German classics, kind of modern German classics at that. And so we have an entire selection in this book haul that is basically all German modern classics from the early 20th century, though I have one from a little bit later. So let's start with the haul that has nothing to do with Germany. So the first thing that I am hauling is the complete English poems of George Herbert. And I have an entire video planned about George Herbert because I knew nothing about him. He's come up quite a bit at my job recently. And so there has been an exhibit up and everything. And so I've become very, very curious about him. So I decided that I really wanted to learn more. Thought maybe the best way to do it would be to pick up a selection of his poetry. The weird thing is, I don't think it's currently in print from Penguin or from Oxford. I couldn't find it new. I did find this on Thrift Books, and luckily it is his complete poems. So I'm excited about this. He is an English poet from the 1600s, I think. But hopefully I will make a video kind of sharing what I have learned with you as I learn more about him and read some of his poetry. I think I've always heard the name George Herbert, but I had no context for it. And I've never read him, certainly, which feels very strange to me for him to have lived at the same time as essentially Milton. But I am a Milton fangirl, so maybe I just overlooked him to read Paradise Lost for the 6th time in college. I wouldn't put it past me. I was that type of student. But I am looking forward to this. I feel confident that I'm gonna like it because I do tend to like poetry of this time period. And I think a lot of his poems are quite short, which really appeals to me right now. Next we have The Double by Fyodor Dostoevsky. And this is one of his earliest works, I think, and it's about a guy with a doppelganger, which I just think sounds incredible, and this doppelganger is essentially trying to steal his life out from under him. And I want to say that this is not K-pop inspired, but it kind of is. I'm obsessed with the idea that in a lot of K-pop, there's always kind of an evil version of yourself, a clone, a doppelganger, just an evil parallel world. I'm interested in that, and I've been interested in the concept of a doppelganger for a very long time, mostly because of the Vampire Diaries. It is what it is. So I'm intrigued by the thought behind this. I'm also intrigued by the fact that apparently Dostoevsky really pared this down and really edited it. It was apparently a much longer book, and in fact was a novel, and now I think it's characterized as a novella because publishers really didn't like what he was doing, and so he went back in and cut a lot of it, which is a shame, but I think I'm going to like it. I'm sure it's going to be another banger from Dostoevsky because his work has really been working for me over the past year. So I'm still hoping that this is one that I get to very, very soon. I think it'll be my next Dostoevsky just because it is so short. It's between this and Demons, and Demons is a massive brick of a book, but I want to read that so bad. I just have the sense I'm going to love it. I also have the sense I'm going to love this just because I like the idea behind it. So this is one that I am really excited about. I also picked up Passion by Jude Morgan because it was recommended to me by one of y'all very long time ago, actually. A very long time ago it was recommended to me. But this is a historical fiction surrounding 4 women of the Romantic era. Mary Shelley, I think, Augusta Lee, Lady Caroline Lamb, and it might actually be Fanny Braun, which would be very, very interesting to see something from her perspective. And so this is specifically from the perspective of 4 women in the Romantic era. I am shocked one of them is not Claire, Mary Shelley's stepsister. I find Claire one of the most fascinating figures of this time period, and I think a lot of people don't like her. So I'd be interested to see what somebody did with her in historical fiction. But this is one that I'm excited about. I'm really excited because one of y'all recommended it to me, and I do feel like I'm probably really going to like this. I've never read anything by Jude Morgan, but the name sounds so familiar to me. So I'm wondering what else they've written. But this is a big, chunky historical fiction, and I'm kind of in the mood for historical fiction right now, so I'm hoping that I probably pick this one up pretty soon. Speaking of historical fiction, I have a couple of new releases. One of these is Beasts of a Little Land, and I'm about 100 pages into this, and I am not vibing it. And I wonder if some of that's just me. It's just me and my slump, but I don't know. Some of it does feel like it is the book. And so this is historical fiction that is covering a very large swath of time in the early 20th century when Japan has invaded Korea. And it's actually quite upsetting to read in parts, which I think is part of why I'm not enjoying it. I don't know that I'm in the mind space to read that right now. And there was a scene of assault in here that, though it wasn't graphic, it was very difficult. It was just very difficult to read. So this is dealing with war, but it's also dealing with kind of a love story between 2 characters. There's kind of a love triangle. I'm really invested in the love triangle, so I don't want to DNF this, but because it is trying to cover so many years at once, it's moving way too fast through those time periods. And so it doesn't really give you enough time to understand what's going on kind of historically. It also doesn't really give you enough time to understand what's going on with the characters, but I am kind of attached to the characters, and maybe that's the point. Maybe I'm just supposed to be more invested in them than in the plot of the book, but I'm going to carry on with this one. I've heard this compared a lot to Pachinko, and a lot of people have said that they like this more than Pachinko. I get the sense that I'm probably going to be someone who really likes Pachinko over this. So I kind of want to read this through and then immediately read Pachinko. I need to do that anyway because the show is out. I need to see it. I need to see Lee Min-ho in Pachinko, and I need to see it very, very soon. But I think I want to read these and kind of compare them. Let me know if that would be interesting to you as a video idea, because apparently they cover the same span of time, though this went a little bit earlier. So this is very action-packed. I just don't know how I feel about it right now. My book of the month pick, I decided to include it in this haul. My book of the month pick this month is Kaikeyi, if I am saying that correctly at all, by Vaishnavi Patel. And this is a retelling of the Ramayana from Kaikeyi's perspective. And I think typically she is shown to be a villain in the Ramayana. I have never read any single bit of the Ramayana. I was really excited about this book, and so I was going to order the Penguin Classic Ramayana, which is very, very small, and I unintentionally thought that was the entire thing. And then reading up on it, I learned that the Ramayana is like thousands of pages long, and that Penguin decided to somehow summarize it in less than 100 pages, which just seems very, very strange to me. So I'm completely unfamiliar with the source material here. I have also started this one, and I have unfortunately put it down. It's very, very slow. And I should have known that because it's constantly being compared to Circe. And Circe was also slow, but there was something about it to me. I really don't know what it was. And in fact, now, were I to pick up Circe today, would I feel the same way? I don't know. I think it just hit me at the right time. I want to come back to this with more context for it. I really feel like this is a book that would be very rewarding for you if you're very familiar with this story, because you're going to get to see how the author turns this story on its head. And so I would really like to be more familiar with Kaikeyi's story before I finish this out. But I am 100 pages in. It's long and it's slow. It's really just not what I'm vibing with right now. So hopefully this is one that I will come back to. This was my most anticipated release of the year. And so I hate to say that I'm kind of currently DNFing it, but I think I will read a little bit more of the Ramayana and then come back and finish this out. I think I'll probably be happier for that, actually, because I will have really a lot of context for what the author is trying to do with this story. Well, the time is here. We are into my German classic section, kind of. One of these, I don't know if you would term it a classic because it came out in the 70s, just feels weird to me at this point to call anything that came out in the 70s a classic, though I guess it was 50 years ago now. That's kind of crazy to think about. But I recently picked up Momo by Michael Ende. This is my current read. I am reading this because one of my favorite K-pop idols based an entire album around this book and the concepts that are talked about within this book. And it is, first of all, a phenomenal album. It is, second of all, a phenomenal book. And third of all, I am really amazed at how this book has made me think. I mean, really, because there's so much about it about wasting time. Time is the theme of this book, and I don't really want to tell you anything else other than that. It's kind of a middle grade, but it does feel like it's playing with very adult themes, and I don't really know that a child would enjoy it at the point that I'm at, but it's very, very interesting how time is discussed, and specifically the concept of wasting time. There are these evil characters in this book who are the men in gray suits, and they kind of work for the time bank. And what they define as wasting time is so interesting to me. I was thinking about that just today, thinking that I've wasted so much time on this task that I've not even brought to completion, and what was the point of doing this? And then I thought to myself, was that wasted time? Have I learned something from this experience? And also, like, when you're just at home doing nothing and you feel like, oh, I've wasted time. I've wasted all this time watching YouTube. I've wasted all this time reading or binge watching television. Was that wasted time because you enjoyed it? Was that wasted time? This book is so deep. I'm loving it so far. I don't know what I will rate it, though. I actually don't know if I am enjoying it or if I am just enjoying the concepts. So I don't think this one is going to reach 5 stars for me, but probably a very high 4. I am loving this so far. This is my current read. Now we're into kind of our semi-Hermann Hesse part of the haul. So I picked up 3 of Hermann Hesse's books. I intend to get all of them. These were the 3 that appealed to me the most right off the bat. So I picked up Narcissus and Goldmund, which is apparently a historical fiction set in medieval Germany at a monastery, with Narcissus, who is dark and serious, and Goldmund, the sunny, childlike, and reckless monk, which is going to be very, very interesting. I loved everything that was said about religion in Damien. I just was fascinated by that book. And so I figured this one would really take those themes and explore them to a deeper degree, probably, because it is a much longer book and it's set explicitly at a monastery. So I felt like I would really like that. So hopefully this is one that I will really take to. I also picked up Steppenwolf, which I have started. This is going to be, I think, my next read. And boy, it has already blown me away. In fact, I'm going to read you a passage of it. I'm going to read you a passage because this is truly, truly remarkable. He said to me once when we were talking of the so-called horrors of the Middle Ages, these horrors were really non-existent. A man of the Middle Ages would detest the whole mode of our present-day life as something far more than horrible, far more than barbarous. Every age, every culture, every custom and tradition has its own character, its own weakness and its own strength, its beauties and ugliness, accepts certain sufferings as matters of course, puts up patiently with certain evils. Human life is reduced to real suffering, to hell, only when 2 ages, 2 cultures and religions overlap. A man of the classical age who had to live in medieval times would suffocate miserably, just as a savage does in the midst of our civilization. Now, there are times when a whole generation is caught in this way between 2 ages, 2 modes of life, with the consequence that it loses all power to understand itself and has no standard, no security, no simple acquiescence. Naturally, everyone does not feel this equally strongly. A nature such as Nietzsche's had to suffer our present ills more than a generation in advance. What he had to go through alone and misunderstood, thousands suffer today. No words. I don't know what was going through this man's mind when he sat down to write books, but thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Hermann Hesse. Wow. So this is apparently about a man who believes he is a wolf, or he has kind of like a wolf inside him, which is very interesting. I don't want to know much about it because I kind of wanted to go in blind. This is one that I've heard a lot about, and so I am really excited about it. The introduction already had me fired up, so I'm ready for this one. I think this will be my next read. Last of Hermann Hesse's, I picked up The Journey to the East, which I don't know very much about. Apparently, this kind of overlaps a bunch of characters from his other books, and they also interact with characters from other novels, which sounds very, very fascinating to me. And so I'm not quite sure where I should put this in my reading of Hermann Hesse. I think maybe I should probably go chronologically, but I'm not going to do that. We have no organization here on this channel, as I'm sure you all know. But I'm excited about this, but I do think it probably should be one of the last ones of his that I read because I think it encompasses everything that he has written. So I'm fascinated by this. This is the same edition as the edition of Damien that I have, so I know I'm going to love the translation. I really love the older translations of Hermann Hesse. I did read partially some of Narcissus and Goldmund to decide which one I wanted to read next. The modern translation doesn't have the same magic. It really doesn't. It doesn't have the same really mystical, beautiful quality to it that the older translations have. So if you were curious how I feel about translations, so far, that's how I'm feeling, but I think I'm probably really going to enjoy this. I think Hermann Hesse is a new favorite author. Last but not least, I have finally hauled 2 Thomas Mann books, and y'all are just gonna laugh at me because I'm in a slump right now, so why am I hauling 2 of the biggest books that he has written? But so one of these is Buddenbrooks, which is kind of a family saga, I believe. And apparently a lot of it really resembles the life of the Mann's neighbors in Lübeck, Germany. And so there is kind of an element of truth to this, I think. The only Thomas Mann I have ever read was Death in Venice, and it was many years ago. In fact, I have barely any memory of that, but I think I'm probably going to like this. So this is one that I am tentatively excited about. I'm gonna make Svea read this with me. She's agreed to it, so she knows it's coming. But Svea is German, and so she's going to be able to read this in the original. I'm going to be reading it in translation. I think it's going to be very interesting to kind of compare our reading experiences and see how well Thomas Mann translates into English. I've heard a lot about these editions and their translations specifically, so I hope this was really the one to get. This was also supposedly acceptable on Thrift Books' website. I truly don't even know what that means anymore because this looks almost like a brand new book. Acceptable. I mean, it's really, really in great condition. I no longer understand the designations that Thrift Books gives on their website because it's never true anymore. Last but not least, it is The Magic Mountain. This is another one that comes highly recommended by y'all and by several of y'all. So many of my subscribers have recommended this book to me over the years. So I feel pretty confident that I'm going to like this one. I'm going into this with an open mind because I've also heard that it's very philosophical, and I normally say that I am not a very philosophical person and I'm not somebody who really gets into philosophy in books. I don't think that's true. I think maybe a straight philosophical text is uninteresting to me, but I think philosophy as explored in a fictional way is something that really appeals to me, because looking back, some of my favorite books are very philosophical. So I think I'm probably going to enjoy this. I've heard it's very conceptual and not very plot-based, but I've really been enjoying books written like that lately. So I'm hoping that this is a good sign, and I'm hoping that I really enjoy this. So that is the first book haul of 2022, and I'm really proud of myself. I'm really excited about all of the books here, and I've already started reading several of them, which makes me feel really good and accomplished. But I would love to know down below if you have read any of these, if there are any of them that you would prioritize, and what you have been hauling recently. But that's going to be all for me today. I hope you're all having a great week. Happy reading. Goodbye.